My name is Olivia Collins. I am 32 years old, and I live in Seattle. I will never forget the silence inside that church. It was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, but all I could stare at was the empty wooden chair in the front row. My father wasn't there. 10 minutes before the music started, my phone had buzzed in my hand. I remember staring at the screen, my white dress trembling around me. It was a text from him. It didn't say, "I love you." It didn't say, "I'm sorry." It just said, "Can't make it, important meeting." I had to swallow my tears, lift my chin, and walk down that aisle alone. That was the day I realized I didn't matter to him. I was invisible unless I was useful. But today, everything changed. My face is on the news. My hotel chain just hit a valuation of $580 million. And suddenly, for the first time in years, my phone buzzed with his name. Family meeting, 7 p.m., don't be late. He thinks he can summon me because now I have money. He thinks I am still that desperate little girl waiting for his approval. But he is wrong. He is about to meet the woman he created when he left that chair empty. But before I tell you how everything flipped, like and subscribe, drop a comment. Where are you watching from? My name is Olivia Collins. I am 32 years old. I grew up in a house that was always cold, even in the middle of summer. We lived in Seattle, a city known for rain, but the dampness inside our home had nothing to do with the weather. It was a coldness that came from silence. It was a chill that came from knowing you were present but not seen. My father, Richard Collins, was a man who took up a lot of space. He was loud when he was on the phone, booming with laughter when he was with his business partners, and demanding when he spoke to the staff. But when he looked at me, his eyes glazed over. It was as if I was a piece of furniture he had forgotten he bought. My mother, Evelyn, was his shadow. She spent her life smoothing out the air around him, making sure nothing upset him. She was a nervous woman, always wringing her hands, her eyes darting to the door to see if he was home yet. She loved me, I think, but she loved him more. Or maybe she just feared him more. And then there was Ethan, my older brother. If I was the furniture, Ethan was the sun. The entire household revolved around his orbit. If Ethan had a baseball game, the whole family went. Dad would leave work early. Mom would pack snacks. If Ethan got a C on a report card, a tutor was hired the next day, and Dad would sit with him for hours, encouraging him, telling him he was destined for greatness. When I got straight A's, Dad would just nod and turn the page of his newspaper. I remember one specific Tuesday when I was 12 years old. It is a memory that is burned into my mind because it was the day I stopped asking for attention and started expecting the silence. I had entered a regional science fair. I had spent 3 months building a complex model of a sustainable water filtration system. I had worked on it every night in the garage, wearing Dad's old oversized work shirt. I was proud of it. I had won first place in my school, and now I was going to the state finals. The finals were on that Tuesday evening. 2 weeks before, I asked Dad to come. "I'll check my schedule, Olivia," he said, not looking up from his laptop. 1 week before, I reminded him. I said, "I'll try, Olivia. Stop pestering me. Business is busy right now." On the morning of the fair, I stood in the kitchen, my stomach in knots. Ethan was eating cereal, complaining about his soccer practice. "Dad," I said, my voice small, "the fair starts at 6 tonight. The awards are at 7. Dad took a sip of his coffee. He looked at his watch. "I have a meeting with the investors from Tokyo, Olivia. You know that, it's a big deal for the company." "But you said you'd try," I whispered. "Trying doesn't mean promising," he snapped. "Don't be dramatic. Your mother will go." I looked at Mom. She gave me a sad, apologetic smile. "I can't, honey. Ethan needs a ride to the away game in Tacoma, and your father needs the other car." I stood there, holding my backpack strap so tight my knuckles turned white. "So nobody is coming." "It's just a science fair, Liv," Ethan mumbled, his mouth full of milk. "It's not like it's the playoffs." I went to the fair alone. I set up my project alone. When the judges came around, I explained my water filtration system with a clear, steady voice, even though my heart was breaking. I watched other kids high-five their dads. I watched mothers hugging their daughters. I stood by my display, smiling a fake smile, pretending I didn't care. I won second place in the entire state. They called my name on the big stage. "Olivia Collins." I walked up the stairs. The spotlight was bright and hot. I looked out into the dark auditorium, searching for a familiar face. Just one. Maybe Dad had finished his meeting early. Maybe Mom had dropped Ethan off and raced back. but the seats were filled with strangers. I took the ribbon. I shook the judge's hand, and I walked off the stage. When I got home that night, the house was dark. They were all asleep. I put the red ribbon on the kitchen counter, right next to the coffee maker where Dad would see it in the morning. The next morning, the ribbon was gone. Mom had tidied up. No one mentioned it. No one asked how it went. At breakfast, Dad was talking about Ethan's game. He almost scored in the second half, Dad said, beaming, slapping Ethan on the back. That's my boy, you've got the drive, son, you've got the killer instinct. I sat there, eating my toast, feeling invisible. That was the day I learned the rule of the Collins household. Love was a currency, and I was bankrupt. I spent the rest of my teenage years trying to earn that currency. I thought if I was perfect enough, quiet enough, successful enough, they would finally see me. I graduated top of my class. I got into a top business school. I learned to play the piano. I kept myself fit and well-dressed, but nothing worked. I was just Olivia, the extra child, the backup plan. I remember asking Mom once when I was 20 why Dad was so hard on me. Why he never seemed to care. Mom sighed, looking out the window at the rain. He sees himself in Ethan, Olivia. He sees his legacy. With you, he just doesn't know what to do with a daughter. He's a businessman. He understands value. He just doesn't see. Well, he's under a lot of pressure. He doesn't see my value, I said. He loves you in his own way, she replied. That was always her line, in his own way, but love shouldn't be a riddle you have to solve. It shouldn't be a secret code. Love should be obvious. It should be there when you win, and it should be there when you lose. I realized then that I was waiting for a train at an airport. I was waiting for something that was never going to arrive. But still, a foolish part of me held on. I held on until the day I got married. That was the day the last thread finally snapped. I met Daniel when I was 24. He was everything my family wasn't. He was warm, he listened when I spoke, and he didn't care about money or status. He was a landscape architect. He built gardens, parks, and quiet places. He loved me simply and loudly. When we got engaged, I felt a flicker of hope. A wedding is a big family event. It's traditional. My father loved tradition. He loved appearances. Surely, for his only daughter's wedding, he would step up. I planned the wedding for a year. I wanted it to be perfect, not just for me, but for them. I wanted to give my father a role that would make him proud. I went to his office to ask him the question. I made an appointment with his secretary, which was the only way to ensure I'd get 5 minutes of his time. I walked into his massive corner office. He was on the phone, as usual. He waved me to a chair and kept talking for 10 minutes while I sat there, smoothing my skirt. Finally, he hung up. What is it, Olivia? I have a lunch meeting in 20 minutes. I wanted to ask you something, Dad, I said. About the wedding. How much is it going to cost? He asked immediately, reaching for his checkbook. I told your mother to handle the budget. It's not about the money, I said. I want you to walk me down the aisle. I want you to give me away. He paused. He looked at me, and for a second I saw a flicker of something soft in his eyes. Maybe it was nostalgia, maybe it was guilt. Of course, he said. It's the father's duty. I'll be there, promise, I asked. No meetings, no business trips. I promise, Olivia, I'll be there. I held onto that promise like a lifeline. The months passed. The planning was stressful. Mom complained about the flowers I chose. Ethan made jokes about Daniel's job, calling him a gardener. But I didn't care. Dad was going to walk me down the aisle. It was going to be the moment where we finally connected. The rehearsal dinner was the night before the wedding. We rented a private room at a nice seafood restaurant. Daniel's parents were there, kind and smiling. My mom was there, looking anxious. Ethan was there, checking his phone every 5 seconds. But Dad's chair was empty. Where is he? I asked Mom. He got held up, she whispered. A crisis at the office. He said he'll try to make it for dessert. He never showed up. I went to bed that night in the hotel suite feeling sick. Daniel held me. He'll be there tomorrow, Liv, he promised. I know, I said. He has to be. The morning of the wedding was beautiful. The sky was a crisp, clear blue. I spent hours getting ready. My hair was pinned up, my makeup was flawless. I put on the white dress. I looked in the mirror and felt beautiful. I felt like a bride. We were at the church. The ceremony was scheduled for 2 p.m. At 1:30 p.m., I was in the bridal room. The photographer was taking pictures. My bridesmaids were laughing, drinking champagne. Has anyone seen my dad? I asked. He's probably waiting in the vestibule, one of them said. At 1:45 p.m., I started to pace. My hands were shaking. I asked my mother to go check. She came back 5 minutes later, her face pale. Is he here? I asked. He's not answering his phone, she said, her voice trembling. Traffic is bad, Olivia. You know how traffic is. He's not here. He'll be here, she insisted. He wouldn't miss this. At 1:50 p.m. my phone buzzed. It was sitting on the vanity table. I stared at it. I knew, deeply in my gut, I knew. I picked it up. A text message from Dad. I opened it. Can't make it. Important meeting came up. Deal of a lifetime, sorry, send pictures. I stared at the words, deal of a lifetime. My wedding wasn't the deal of a lifetime. I wasn't the deal of a lifetime. I was an appointment he could cancel. The room went silent. The bridesmaids stopped laughing. My mother looked at me, saw the phone, and burst into tears. Oh, Olivia, oh, honey, he just has so much pressure. Stop, I said. My voice was eerily calm. Stop making excuses for him. We can wait, Mom said. We can delay the ceremony. No, I said, we are not waiting. But who will walk you? She asked. Ethan can do it, Ethan. Come here? No, I said again, louder this time. I don't want Ethan, I don't want anyone. I stood up, I checked my makeup. I didn't cry. The tears were there, burning behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. If I started crying now, I would never stop. I had to be strong. I had to be made of stone. I walked out of the room. I walked to the back of the church. The doors were closed. I could hear the organ music playing. The guests were waiting. Daniel was waiting. The coordinator looked at me, confused. Where is your father? He's not coming, I said. Open the doors. Are you sure you want to go alone? Open the doors. The heavy wooden doors swung open. The music swelled to the wedding march. Everyone stood up and turned around. I saw the sea of faces. I saw Daniel standing at the altar, looking handsome and worried. And then I saw the empty spot in the front row next to my mother. The empty chair. It felt like a punch to the gut. Everyone was looking at me, then looking at the empty space beside me. I could hear the whispers, the confusion, the pity. Poor Olivia, her father didn't come. I took a breath. I gripped my bouquet so hard the stem snapped, and I started to walk. One step, then another. I walked down that long aisle alone. I held my head high. I didn't look at my mother, who was sobbing into a handkerchief. I didn't look at Ethan, who looked bored. I kept my eyes locked on Daniel. He was the only real thing in the room. When I reached the altar, Daniel stepped forward. He didn't wait for the priest. He stepped down, took my hand, and whispered, I've got you, you're not alone. I looked at him, and that's when a single tear escaped. I know, I whispered. We got married. I said my vows. I smiled for the pictures. But inside, something had died. The little girl who wanted her daddy's approval was gone. She died on that aisle. In her place, a woman was born. A woman who realized that if she wanted anything in this life, love, success, peace, she was going to have to build it herself. I didn't speak to my father for a year after that. He sent a blender as a gift 3 weeks later. No card, just a blender. I returned it after the wedding. I changed. I stopped calling home. I stopped visiting. I realized that trying to get blood from a stone was just leaving me exhausted and bruised. I needed to focus on something else. I needed to prove to myself that I wasn't worthless. Daniel and I moved to Oregon. We wanted a fresh start, away from the rainy shadows of Seattle and the toxicity of my family. I had a small trust fund from my grandmother, not a huge amount, but enough for a down payment. I found a property for sale on the coast. It was an old, dilapidated fishing lodge called the Pine Cove. It was a disaster. The roof leaked, the floors were rotting, and it smelled like mildew and old cigarettes. Are you sure about this? Daniel asked, looking at the peeling paint. I can see it, I said, looking past the rot. I can see what it could be. I bought it. And then I went to work. I didn't hire a big construction crew. I couldn't afford one. It was just me, Daniel, and 2 local guys we hired. For 2 years, I didn't take a day off. I woke up at 4 a.m. every single morning. I put on work boots and overalls. I learned how to sand floors. I learned how to fix plumbing. I painted every single wall myself. My hands, which used to be manicured, became rough and calloused. My back ached constantly, but I loved it. Every nail I hammered felt like I was hammering away my past. Every wall I painted felt like I was covering up the memories of that empty chair. We renamed it the Ember. We opened with just 10 rooms. I worked the front desk. I cleaned the toilets. I cooked breakfast in the kitchen. Daniel handled the landscaping, turning the overgrown weeds into a magical forest garden. The first month, we had 3 guests. I treated them like royalty. I made sure their coffee was perfect. I left handwritten notes on their pillows. I wanted them to feel the warmth I never had. Word spread. People started writing reviews. The most welcoming place on the coast. A hidden gem. The owner makes you feel like family. Family. That word used to hurt me. Now it was my business model. By the end of the first year, we were fully booked for 6 months in advance. We made a profit. I took that profit and bought the rundown motel next door. We renovated that too. Then we bought a historic inn in Portland. Then a boutique hotel in Napa Valley. I became obsessed. I wasn't just building hotels, I was building an empire. I studied the market. I learned about real estate, finance, and hospitality. I became a shark, but a shark with a smile. I negotiated deals that made seasoned businessmen sweat, but I did it with politeness and grace. 5 years passed. The Ember Collection grew to 11 properties across the West Coast. We were known for luxury, intimacy, and incredible service. During those 5 years, my interaction with my family was minimal. I sent cards for birthdays. They sent generic text messages. Happy B-Day. Hope you're good. They didn't know about the hotels. Well, they knew I was running a little bed and breakfast, as Ethan called it. They didn't know I was the CEO of a corporation. They didn't ask, and I didn't tell. Why would I? They weren't interested in Olivia the builder. They were only interested in themselves. I heard snippets of news through the grapevine. Dad's business was struggling. The market was changing, and he was too stubborn to adapt. Ethan had started 3 different companies, and all of them had failed. Dad had bailaid him out every time. It didn't surprise me. Ethan had never learned to work. He had only learned to be praised. I, on the other hand, had learned to survive. I remember one night, sitting in my office at our flagship hotel in Seattle. Yes, I had returned to the city, but on my own terms. I looked out the window at the skyline. I was 30 years old. I was wealthy. I was happily married. And I had done it all without asking my father for a single penny. I looked at the phone. I hadn't spoken to him in 6 months. "Do you miss them?" Daniel asked, walking in and handing me a cup of tea. "I miss the idea of them," I said honestly. "I miss the family I wished I had, but I don't miss the people they actually are." "You've won, you know," Daniel said. "It's not a competition," I said, but deep down maybe it was. Maybe I was still that little girl at the science fair, waiting to show them my blue ribbon. But the ribbon was now a multi-million-dollar company. I just didn't know that the ribbon was about to get a lot bigger. And the silence was about to end. It was a Tuesday morning. It was raining, of course. I was in the conference room with my executive team. We were going over the quarterly reports. The atmosphere was electric. We had been working for months on a massive merger deal, bringing in private equity to expand the Ember Collection internationally. Lena, my CFO and best friend, walked in. She was holding a bottle of champagne and a stack of newspapers. Her face was flushed. "We did it," she said. Her voice was shaking. "Did what?" I asked, looking up from my laptop. She slammed the newspaper down on the table. The headline screamed in bold black letters. Ember Collection valued at $580 million in historic deal. Underneath was a picture of me. A picture Daniel had taken. I looked strong. Confident. $580 million, Lena said. "Olivia, you are officially a half-billionaire." The room erupted. My team was cheering, clapping, popping the champagne. Daniel ran in and lifted me off the ground, spinning me around. "I knew it," he yelled. "I knew you could do it." I stood there feeling a strange mix of emotions. Pride, yes, relief, absolutely, but also a quiet, steady calm. I had done it. The invisible daughter, the extra child, the girl who walked down the aisle alone, she had built a $500 million kingdom. I took a sip of champagne. My hands were steady. Then my phone buzzed on the table. It was a sharp, aggressive vibration against the mahogany wood. I looked down. "Sender, Dad." The room seemed to go quiet, even though everyone was still cheering. The name on the screen felt like a ghost. I hadn't heard from him since Christmas, which was a generic Merry Christmas text. I picked up the phone. My thumb hovered over the screen. What does he want? I thought. Does he know? Of course he knew. He read the business news religiously. He probably choked on his morning coffee when he saw my face on the front page. I opened the text. "Olivia, family dinner at 7 p.m. tonight at the club. Important discussion. Do not be late." I stared at the words. No congratulations. No I'm proud of you. No wow, just a summons, a command, like I was an employee he was calling into his office. "Who is it?" Lena asked, noticing my expression. "My father," I said. Is he congratulating you? I laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. No, he wants a meeting. Are you going? Daniel asked. He looked concerned. He knew the pain they caused me. You don't have to go, Liv. You don't owe them anything. I looked at the newspaper again. I looked at the valuation. $580 million. Then I thought about my father. I thought about the rumors I had heard that his company was in trouble, that he was leveraging everything he owned. Suddenly, the text made sense. He wasn't calling because he missed me. He wasn't calling because he was proud. He was calling because he was drowning. And he just realized that I was the only lifeboat in sight. I'm going, I said to Daniel. Why? Because, I said, picking up my purse. For 30 years, I've been walking into rooms wondering if I was good enough for them. Tonight, I'm going to walk into that room knowing I own the table. I turned to Lena. Get me a full financial report on Collins Enterprises. I want to know everything. Debts, loans, liens, lawsuits, everything. Have it on my desk in an hour. Lena grinned. She knew exactly what I was thinking. You got it, boss. I walked to the window and looked out at the rain. The little girl who begged for attention was gone. The woman who was about to walk into that dinner wasn't looking for love. She was looking for closure. And if my father thought he could just snap his fingers and get my money, he was in for the shock of his life. The game had changed. And for the first time, I was the one holding all the cards. I sat at my desk, the rain hammering against the glass of my office window. The city of Seattle looked gray and blurred below me, but inside my office, everything was sharp and high definition. Especially the stack of documents Lena had just placed in front of me. It's worse than we thought, Olivia, Lena said. She wasn't smiling anymore. She looked serious, almost frightened. It's a bloodbath. I opened the folder labeled Collins Enterprises Financial Audit. My father had always been a myth to me. Growing up, I thought he was invincible. He was the man who commanded rooms, who built skyscrapers, who made grown men tremble with a single phone call. I thought he was made of money. I thought his power was infinite. But looking at these papers, I realized the myth was a lie. Walk me through it, I said, my finger tracing the red lines on the spreadsheet. Okay, Lena said, pulling up a chair. First, the liquidity. He has none. He's cash poor. He's been leveraging his existing properties to buy new ones, but the new ones aren't generating revenue. It's a house of cards. The loans, defaulted, Lena said. He has 3 major loans with Citibank. He's missed payments on all of them for the last 4 months. The bank has already sent a notice of intent to foreclose. They are about to seize the headquarters. I felt a cold chill. The headquarters. That building was his pride and joy. It had his name in gold letters above the door. What about Ethan? I asked. He's the vice president of operations. What has he been doing? Lena hesitated. She flipped to page 12. That's the worst part. Look at the payroll and expense accounts. I looked. My jaw tightened. Ethan was drawing a salary of $400,000 a year, but that wasn't the problem. The problem was the corporate credit card expenses. Private jet charter to Cabo, $22,000. Luxury suite in Vegas, $15,000. New Porsche lease company vehicle, $3,500/month. He's bleeding the company dry, I whispered. Dad is drowning and Ethan is drilling holes in the bottom of the boat. And your father is letting him, Lena added. There's no oversight, no discipline. Your father is covering for him, taking out high-interest short-term loans just to keep payroll afloat. He's borrowing from loan sharks, Olivia. Not literally, but close enough. Private hard money lenders with predatory rates. I closed the folder. I felt sick. My father wasn't just bad at business, he was delusional. He was sacrificing his entire life's work to protect the ego of his son. He was willing to go bankrupt rather than admit that Ethan was a failure. And now, he was calling me. I stood up and paced the room. He wants me to save him, I said. Tonight, the dinner. He's going to ask for a loan. He probably thinks I'll write him a check for $10 million, $20 million just to get a pat on the head. If you give him money, Lena said, it will be gone in 6 months. Ethan will spend it. Your father will mismanage it. It would be like throwing gold into a fire. I know, I said. I walked to the window. I thought about the empty chair at my wedding. I thought about the science fair ribbon. I thought about the text message. Can't make it. Important meeting. He didn't respect me. He didn't love me. He just saw me as a resource. If I gave him the money, nothing would change. He would take it, maybe say a quick thanks, and then go back to ignoring me. Ethan would keep laughing at me while spending my money on sports cars. I'm not going to give him a loan, I said, turning back to Lena. So you're going to let him crash? Lena asked. No, I said, my voice was deadly calm. I'm not going to let him crash, I'm going to catch him, but I'm not going to be his savior, I'm going to be his boss. Lena raised an eyebrow. What are you planning? Who holds the debt? I asked. The big loans, the ones threatening foreclosure. Citibank, and a private equity firm called Vanguard Holdings. Get them on the phone, I said. Right now. Olivia, it's 4 p.m., the banks are closing. I don't care, I said. Call the VP of Commercial Lending at Citibank. Tell him Olivia Collins of the Ember Collection wants to talk. Tell him I want to buy the debt. Lena's eyes went wide. You want to buy your father's debt? I want to buy all of it, I said. Every mortgage, every lien, every overdue loan. I want to become the creditor. I don't want to give my father money. I want to own the paper his life is printed on. That will cost a fortune, Lena said. You'd have to liquidate some assets. You'd have to dip into the merger capital. Do it, I said. We have the valuation. We have the liquidity. Make the deal. I want the paperwork signed and digital copies in my inbox before I walk into that dinner at 7 p.m. Lena stared at me for a second, then a slow grin spread across her face. She typed furiously on her phone. I'm on it. I sat back down in my leather chair. My heart was pounding, but not from fear. It was the adrenaline of the hunt. My father had spent my entire life telling me I was worthless. He had spent my entire life making me feel small. Tonight, when I walked into that country club, I wouldn't be small. I would be the biggest thing in the room. I would effectively own him. I wasn't doing this for revenge, I told myself. I was doing it for clarity. I needed to show him, once and for all, that the daughter he ignored was the only one capable of standing tall. I looked at the clock. 4:15 p.m. I had less than 3 hours to buy an empire. The next 2 hours were a blur of high-stakes negotiation. I didn't leave my office. I had 2 phones going at once. On one line, I had the vice president of Citibank. On the other, I had my legal team. Miss Collins, the banker said, his voice smooth but surprised. This is highly irregular. Buying out a distressed portfolio of this size usually takes weeks of due diligence. I don't need due diligence, I said, my voice crisp. I know the assets. I grew up in them. I know the liabilities. I'm looking at your foreclosure notice right now. You're about to seize the properties, which means you'll have to deal with auctions, legal fees, and bad press. I am offering you a clean exit. I will pay off the principal plus 5%. Cash wire today. There was silence on the line. Banks hate messy foreclosures, they love cash. Plus 5%? He asked. Plus 5%. But the transfer of the lien happens immediately. By 6:30 p.m., I want to be the legal holder of the mortgage on the Collins Tower and the 3 industrial parks. Hold on, he said. I put him on mute. I turned to my lawyer, Sarah. What about the private loans? Vanguard Holdings is tougher, Sarah said. They know your father is desperate. They're charging him 18% interest. They don't want to sell. Offer them the principal and a buyout fee, I said. Tell them if they don't take it, I'll tie them up in litigation for 3 years regarding predatory lending practices. My father didn't read the fine print, but I did. There are clauses in there that are borderline illegal. Sarah smiled. You're playing hardball. I learned from the man himself, I said. By 5:45 p.m., the deals were closing. The fax machine was humming. Digital signatures were flying across the secure server. One by one, the notifications popped up on my screen. Transfer complete, Collins Tower Mortgage. Transfer complete, Industrial Park A, B, C. Transfer complete, Equipment liens. It was happening. I was spending millions of dollars, draining a significant portion of my liquid cash, but I was securing control. At 6:15 p.m., Lena walked in with a single, thin blue folder. It's done, she said. You own it all. Technically, as of 5 minutes ago, your father is 3 months behind on his payments to you. I took the folder. It felt heavy, even though it only held a few sheets of paper. This was it. This was the leverage. Thank you, Lena, I said. Go home, get some rest. Good luck, she said. Give them hell. I went to the private bathroom attached to my office to change. I had brought a change of clothes, knowing I wouldn't have time to go home. I took off my comfortable gray work blazer. I washed my face. I looked at myself in the mirror. I looked tired, but my eyes were bright. They were fierce. I put on a black dress. It was simple, elegant, and sharp. High neck, long sleeves, fitted, it looked like armor. I put on my diamond earrings, the ones I bought for myself when I opened my 5th hotel. I applied red lipstick. I wasn't dressing for a family dinner. I was dressing for a funeral. The funeral of my childhood hopes. I walked out of the office and down to the parking garage. My car was waiting, a sleek black sedan. I got in and drove into the rainy Seattle night. The drive to the country club took 30 minutes. I knew every turn. This was the club where we spent every Sunday brunch growing up. This was where Dad played golf while Mom drank mimosas and told me to sit still. This was where Ethan threw tantrums until the waiters brought him extra ice cream. I pulled up to the valet. The young man opened my door. "Welcome to the club, ma'am," he said. I stepped out, the rain misting against my face. I clutched the blue folder against my chest. I walked up the grand staircase. The smell of the place hit me immediately, a mix of old wood polish, expensive perfume, and stagnation. Nothing had changed here in 20 years. It was a monument to the past. My phone buzzed. A text from Daniel, "I love you. You are the strongest person I know. Remember who you are." I took a deep breath. I knew who I was. I wasn't Olivia the victim anymore. I wasn't the girl crying in the church vestibule. I was Olivia Collins, CEO of the Ember Collection. I walked toward the private dining room at the back of the hall. I could hear their voices before I even opened the door. My father's booming, agitated voice. "Where is she?" "It's 7:05, she's late, disrespectful." My mother's soothing, nervous tone. "She'll be here, Richard, traffic is bad." Ethan's scoff. "She's probably doing it on purpose, trying to make an entrance. She thinks she's special now just because she got lucky with some hotels." I stopped. I put my hand on the brass doorknob. Lucky. I worked 18-hour days. I scrubbed toilets. I risked everything. And he called it luck. That single word hardened my heart into diamond. I turned the knob and pushed the door open. The room was exactly as I remembered. Dark wood paneling, a crystal chandelier that was slightly too large, and a long table set with white linen. They were sitting at the far end. My father, Richard, sat at the head of the table. He looked older than the last time I saw him. His face was redder, his hair thinner. He wore a suit that looked expensive but fit him poorly, as if he had lost weight from stress. My mother, Evelyn, sat to his right. She looked frail. She was drinking a glass of white wine, her hand shaking slightly. Ethan sat to his left. He was leaning back in his chair, scrolling on his phone. He looked soft. He had the face of a man who had never heard the word no. When I walked in, the conversation stopped. "You're late," my father said. "No hello, no stand up to greet me, just an accusation." "Traffic," I said simply. I didn't apologize. I walked to the empty chair at the other end of the table, the foot of the table, opposite him. I sat down. I placed the blue folder on the table in front of me, face down. "Well," Mom said, her voice high and tight. "You look wonderful, Olivia. That dress is very chic." "Thanks, Mom," I said. "We heard the news," Ethan said, not looking up from his phone. 580 million, that's crazy. Who did you bribe to get that valuation?" "Hard work, Ethan," I said coolly. "You should try it sometime." He scoffed and finally looked at me. His eyes were jealous, pure, unadulterated jealousy. "Relax," I was joking. "Don't get a big head." "Let's order," Dad grunted. "I'm starving." The waiter came. We ordered in an awkward tension. Dad ordered a steak, rare. Mom ordered a salad. Ethan ordered the most expensive lobster dish on the menu. "I'll just have sparkling water," I said. "You're not eating?" Mom asked. "I'm not staying long," I replied. Dad put his menu down. He stared at me across the centerpiece of dying flowers. "Right, let's get to business. We're family, so I'm going to be straight with you, Olivia." "Please do," I said. "The market has been difficult," he began. He used his boardroom voice, the one he used to manipulate investors. "We've had some cash flow issues. Temporary, of course, just a liquidity pinch. I need a bridge loan." "A bridge loan," I repeated. "Yes, just to clear up some short-term obligations, to keep the vultures off our back." "How much?" I asked. He hesitated. He looked at Ethan, then back at me. 15 million. We can structure it as a personal loan. I'll pay you back with interest in 2 years. 15 million, I said. "And what will you use it for?" "Operating costs," he waved his hand dismissively. "Payroll, vendors, the usual." "And to pay off the Porsche?" I asked, looking at Ethan. Ethan froze. Dad frowned. "What?" "The corporate lease on the Porsche," I said. "And the private jet to Cabo, and the Vegas suite. Is my 15 million going to pay for that too?" Dad's face turned a darker shade of red. "That is company business. Ethan meets with clients." "Ethan parties," I said, "and you pay for it." "Watch your mouth," Dad snapped. He slammed his hand on the table. I am your father, you will show me respect. I built this family. I built the roof over your head. You built a roof, I said calmly, but you never made it a home. Stop it, Mom cried. Please don't fight, Olivia, please, your father is under so much stress, can't you help us? You have so much now, we're family. Family, I said. I looked at the empty chair next to me. Where was family when I was 12 and won the science fair? Where was family when I was building my first hotel and sleeping on the floor? Where was family on my wedding day? Silence. The room went dead silent. That was a mistake, Dad muttered. I told you I had a meeting. You lied, I said. There was no meeting. I checked your calendar, Dad. I know people. You were golfing. You skipped my wedding to play 18 holes. He didn't deny it. He just glared at me. So, you're going to hold a grudge forever. You're going to let my company fail, let my legacy die because your feelings are hurt. I'm not going to let it die, I said. I put my hand on the blue folder. Good, Dad said, exhaling. He thought he had won. He thought he had bullied me into submission. I'll have the lawyers draw up the loan agreement tomorrow. No need, I said. I slid the blue folder across the long table. It spun and stopped right in front of his steak knife. What is this? He asked. Open it. He opened the folder. He adjusted his glasses. He read the first page. His face went pale. All the color drained out of him. His hands started to shake. What is this? He whispered. I bought your debt, I said. My voice was steady, clear, and projected to the back of the room. I bought the mortgage on the Collins Tower. I bought the loans on the industrial parks. I bought the liens on the equipment. As of 6 p.m. tonight, I am the sole creditor of Collins Enterprises. Ethan grabbed the paper from Dad's hand. What does that mean? It means, I said, that you don't owe the bank anymore, you owe me. Dad looked up at me. There was fear in his eyes, genuine fear. Olivia, why? Because you were going to lose it all, I said. The bank was foreclosing tomorrow. You didn't tell Mom that, did you? Mom gasped. Richard, I saved the company, I continued. But I'm not a silent partner, and I'm not a charity. I stood up. I felt 10 feet tall. Here are the terms, I said. Effective immediately, Ethan is fired. He is removed from the board and stripped of all company credit cards. You can't do that, Ethan shouted, standing up. Dad, tell her. Dad didn't speak. He was reading the document. He knew I had the legal right. I held the mortgage. I could foreclose at any second. Secondly, I said, Dad, you are stepping down as CEO. You will transition to Chairman Emeritus. You will have no voting power. I am appointing a new management team to restructure the debt and salvage the business. You're taking my company, Dad choked out. My company? I'm saving the assets, I said. The company you built is already dead. You killed it with your ego. I won't sign, he spat. I'll fight you. Read the last page, I said. If you don't agree to these terms, I foreclose immediately. The locks will be changed by morning. You will lose everything. The house, the cars, the reputation. You will be bankrupt. He looked at the paper. He looked at me. He looked at Ethan. He realized he was checkmated. You ungrateful, he sputtered. He stood up, shaking with rage. I gave you life, I raised you. You raised a ghost, I said. You raised someone you thought didn't matter. And now that ghost owns you. You are no daughter of mine, he hissed. The words were venomous. They were meant to kill. I have no daughter, get out. I looked at him. Really looked at him. A sad, angry, failing old man. I know, I said softly. I haven't been your daughter for a long time. I'm just the landlord now. I turned to my mother. She was weeping silently. I'm sorry, Mom. I'll make sure you have a stipend. You won't lose the house. But the spending stops. I turned back to the door. Olivia, Ethan yelled. You can't do this to family. I opened the door. I looked back one last time. Family, I said, is the people who show up. You guys never did. I walked out. I closed the door on their shouting. I walked down the hall, past the stunned waiters, and out into the night air. I walked out of the country club and the rain had stopped. The air smelled fresh, like wet pine and ocean salt. I got into my car and just sat there for a moment. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the release of adrenaline. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs completely. I waited for the guilt. I had been conditioned my whole life to feel guilty whenever I displeased my father. I waited for that crushing weight to settle on my chest. But it didn't come. Instead, I felt lighter. I felt like I had been carrying a backpack full of rocks for 30 years, and I had finally set it down. I started the car and drove home. When I walked into our apartment, Daniel was waiting for me. He didn't ask how it went. He just looked at my face, saw the peace in my eyes, and hugged me. We ordered pizza and watched a comedy movie. I didn't check my phone once. The next morning, the fallout began. My phone was flooded. 20 missed calls from Mom. 12 angry text messages from Ethan. You're a monster. You ruined everything. How do you sleep at night? I didn't reply. I simply blocked Ethan's number. I sent a text to Mom. I love you, but I will not discuss business with you. If you want to see me as your daughter, we can get coffee next week. If you want to be a messenger for Dad, don't come. She didn't reply. The legal transition was swift. My team moved in. They fired Ethan formally the next day. Security escorted him out of the building. I heard he threw a stapler at a wall. Dad signed the papers. He had no choice. He retired to his study at home, refusing to speak to anyone. He became a recluse, brooding over his lost empire. I didn't take joy in their pain. I didn't gloat. In fact, I never set foot in the Collins Tower. I let my management team handle it. I didn't want his office. I didn't want his chair. I had my own. Over the next 6 months, I began to transform his properties. The industrial parks were failing, so I repurposed them. I turned one into a community art space and affordable housing for artists. I turned another into a logistics center for green energy companies. I took the profits from the restructured company and started a scholarship fund for girls in STEM, girls like I was, who had big dreams but no support. I turned the pain into purpose. One afternoon, about 8 months later, I was visiting one of my new hotels, a retreat center in the mountains. It was beautiful, peaceful, quiet, surrounded by trees. I saw a woman checking in. She looked about my age. She was with her parents. They were hugging her, laughing, carrying her bags. The father kissed her forehead and said, "We're so proud of you, honey." I watched them, and for a split second, I felt that old phantom ache. That why not me feeling. But then Daniel walked up beside me. He slipped his hand into mine. "You okay?" he asked. I squeezed his hand. "Yeah, I am." I realized that I couldn't change the past. I couldn't rewrite my childhood. My father was never going to be the man I wanted him to be. My mother was never going to be strong enough to choose me over him. Ethan was never going to be a brother. And that was okay, because I had broken the cycle. I wasn't bitter. Bitterness is drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. I had spit the poison out. I had saved their financial lives, not because I owed them, but because I was better than them. I showed them mercy when they had only shown me disdain. That was my victory. I walked away from the lobby, leading Daniel toward the garden we had planted together. "Did you hear?" Daniel said. "Your brother got a job. Selling cars at a used lot in Tacoma." I smiled. "Good for him. Honest work builds character." "And your dad?" "Still silent," I said. Silence used to hurt me. Now it just feels like peace. I stand in the sunlit lobby of the Summit, my newest and most beautiful hotel. The walls are glass, looking out over the mountains. The light pours in, warm and golden. I am 32 years old. I own a company worth over $500 million. I have a husband who adores me. I have a life that is full, rich, and entirely my own. I look at the camera, at you. There is a myth that family is everything, that you have to stick by them no matter how much they hurt you. That blood is thicker than water. But I'm here to tell you that's not true. Blood is just biology. Family is behavior. If your family makes you feel small, if they make you feel invisible, if they only call you when they need something, that is not love. That is manipulation. You do not owe them your soul just because they gave you their DNA. It took me a long time to learn that. I spent years waiting for an apology that never came. I spent years trying to buy their love with my achievements. But you cannot buy what isn't for sale. And you cannot fill a cup that has a hole in the bottom. The moment I stopped trying to please them was the moment I started to fly. I forgave them. Not for them, but for me. I forgave them so I wouldn't carry the anger anymore. I forgave them and then I moved on. I built my own table. I invited people who loved me for who I was, not for what I could give them. I looked down at my phone. The screen is clear. No frantic texts. No demands. Just a picture of me and Daniel, smiling on a beach. I put the phone in my pocket. I turned back to the window, watching the sun set over the empire I built with my own 2 hands. If you are listening to this and you feel invisible in your own home, if you are the extra child, if you are the one they underestimate, hear me, you are strong, you are capable, and you are not alone. Don't wait for them to give you permission to be great. They never will. Take that pain, take that rejection, and use it as fuel. Build your own castle. And when you're standing at the top, remember who got you there. You did. Thank you for listening to my story. It wasn't easy to tell, but it was necessary. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever had to choose your own peace over your family's drama, please like this video. Subscribe to the channel for more stories of truth and resilience. And in the comments below, tell me, have you ever had to walk away to save yourself? I want to hear your story. I'm Olivia, and I'll see